User location settings. On your right hand side, under preferences, we can go to by user or location. And then in the upper left hand corner, we can go down to edit user location settings here as well. Both will take you to the same settings. So many of these will pertain to you and some of them will not. It'll just be like the settings of your smartphone. You sometimes use all of the settings and sometimes do not. So the two things that I'd like to highlight on this first page, being the top, is that it'll specify what your username is. And then over here, each user can set up as many locations as they want. So let's say that you are accessing IndySoft throughout your facility. Maybe in your lab you have a specific location. So now what I can do is I can actually toggle through two separate locations. So my username is attached to two separate workstations, and all of my settings here can be different based on my location. So starting on the general section, we have the two areas that I think we should pay attention to, which is hiding inactive equipment in the search by list and hiding archive certs and documents. So if we close out of here and go into equipment view and we launch our search for equipment here, you see right here how it says inactive equipment not shown. So if we wanted to be able to search for all equipment, whether active or inactive, we would go back to our user location settings, and we would have hide inactive equipment in search by lists unchecked, right? And then down here we can hide archive certs and documents. So anytime you are creating or calibrating a gauge, and then you incomplete that gauge. Let's see if I can quickly find a gauge record. So I'm going to just quickly dive through and calibrate this gauge. Let's see here. So we quickly go through here, calibrate this gauge, and we are given a cert. Well, when I come in here and I incomplete this cert, I can re-edit the cert, but notice over here the cert gets grayed out. So if I were to recomplete this cert, maybe change something, it will create another cert, right? But it archives this other cert. So whether or not this is displayed is the option that you guys have. So if we wanted to hide that, we just simply click Hide Archive Certs. Next, we have something for staggering interval for search bys. So if you ever notice any sort of lag or speed decrease, we can always stagger this so that it will not try to search until it gives you a little bit of time to enter in the characters. We can only bring up a certain amount of records if you want to. That'll increase search speed. And then minimum number of characters for search bys. So maybe your IDs are comprised of at least 6 characters. So we require you to put in 3 characters before we start to pull data. We have some formatting for dates and other areas here. And then on to event display. So in our history grid, we can actually turn off that certain events are visible in this section. So if you only ever wanted to be able to see calibration events, then we can turn off all other events, and then you're only ever going to see the calibration event. We can take it a step further by then specifying the dates that we want to see. So maybe you only want to see the beginning of 2018 to the end of 2018. You can do that in here, right? Next, we have something called default companies. So as, especially for our commercial cal labs or individuals with many facilities, when you create a gauge record and then you start to add information of that gauge. So let's go into equipment view. So manufacturer, if we start to add different manufacturers in here and hit OK, they add these manufacturer lists to our add edit manufacturers. So that then becomes a list for each company. So depending on which company I'm in, I can add my own individual list. So every single manufacturer that you have will be added to this list. However, that list only belongs to one company at a time. So if I were to go into Gauge Tooling Inc., they don't have a manufacturer list. So for you for those of you who have a lot of companies, that would be very tedious for you to go in there and create separate lists for all your companies. So in my edit user location settings, I have the ability to point to certain fields and pull from one specific company's list. So if I'm always pulling my manufacturers from ABC company, regardless of what company I am in, I can continually add my manufacturers to this one company, and all companies share that list. All right. Next, we have our master equipment list. This is just a way that you can build different filters. So I have a filter right here that's set up. If you wanted to create other ones, you can manage those master equipment lists here. Variables, those are for custom code. Workstation identifiers, if you want to put some enter some information here about the workstation that you're in. Maybe we go to the lab portion, and then in your lab we specify the workstation name and where this computer is housed, things like that. Document locations. Document locations are going to be where your calibration procedures are located. So you can store calibration procedures physically inside of IndySoft, or we can point to a specific folder, like maybe your G drive, C drive, something like that, where the procedures are located. Same thing for regular documents. Next, we have our application settings. Application settings have many different details here, but the points to pay attention to are going to be this file size. So we want to make sure that you don't accidentally grab a very large file. So we go ahead and we limit only 250 KB right now. If you wanted to extend that, you could to whatever size you wanted. We just typically recommend starting there. If you are using web tier, we have different tools like using IndySoft web tier tools. When using web tier, we can auto clear the equipment finder. If you uncheck that, then it'll keep whatever the equipment finder had in there the last time. Down here, depending on the user, you can specify a specific prefix, suffix, and cert number for those specific users. So individual users can have their own numbering system. Next, if we go into printer routing, so each location can have its own printer routing. So if I'm in the lab and my printer 1 I want to route to a specific printer, I don't have any printer set up right now. But if I wanted to point to a specific printer, I just enter in that printer, and then I could even set up maybe like my P-Touch Brother printer as my printer 2, and then maybe that's a different printer. So printer 1 is going to one printer, printer 2 is going to another, and that's based on the location I'm in. So maybe if I'm in the office or the lab, or somewhere else in the facility, I can target my other printers. We have external devices. This would be for like a barcode gun. You could put the barcode name here, barcode gun name. We have an area to click for WIA drivers. And then down here we have our email settings. If you're using Outlook, you would just click this button right here. But if you're using an SMTP server, then have your IT set up this information. Coming down into our default layouts, based on the location and user that is logging in, We can default individuals to specific layouts. So if you want your home view or your equipment view to be pre-populated to a specific layout, we can do that. And then finally, Techsync. This will be coming in version 12. So for all of you single users going into a multi-user, this will allow very efficient syncing of your information. All right, and this concludes user location settings.